Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett, and today it's the Astrology Star Sisters talking about the 2025 March eclipses. And my guest and Astrology Star sister and friend Rachel Lang is joining me today. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me on your channel.
Well, I'm so glad that you could join me today. So, to get a hold of Rachel, her website is rachellangastrologer.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And would you like to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I started my astrology practice almost 20 years ago now, but I've been a student for a lot longer. I started studying when I was about 14 years old. And yeah, so I work with businesses, I work with individuals, and I combine astrology and psychic mediumship. So that's anything I can do to help people navigate a path forward.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And we're going to get into the eclipses. And so we'll start with the Virgo lunar eclipse. And it's a full eclipse at 23 Virgo.
Yeah. So this eclipse is it's happening today, and I think anyone who's watching this can feel it. I mean, can you feel it, Liz? Do you
Oh,
feel it? Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. I do too. And really, what I'm talking about when I say we can feel it, is that eclipses bring us to a crossroads, and so they show us, make us choose one path or another. And usually, whatever events coincide with those decision points, they're by design. Things are meant to be. And that's because anytime we have an eclipse, we have a full moon or a new moon in alignment with the lunar nodes. And the lunar nodes are invisible points that relate to the intersection of the orbital paths of the moon, the sun, and the earth. And so I want to break this down metaphysically. The sun represents the spirit, which is that conscious will, which is the I am essence. And so the sun relates to the goals that we came here to fulfill, like what we're going to create with our lives. The moon represents the soul. So that's more of the energetic imprint that relates to our karma, that relates to our families, our relationships, the deep subconscious stuff of our lives. And the earth is a point that's opposite the sun. And so it's actually in the chart. And the earth represents how we manifest soul and spirit here on the physical plane. And so when you have the lunar nodes involved, what we're talking about is the manifestation of desire and the energetic work that we have to do to fulfill that desire and to fulfill that manifestation. So eclipses are big deals. And we see this play out culturally. There are usually turning points, and we're seeing that right now with talks of a ceasefire in Ukraine, and who knows what's going to happen with that situation. But here's a turning point, and it's announced today. And other news stories that we hear also relate to those turning points. Things that we thought were going in one way are now going in another way. And so this is happening across the board in our personal lives and in our global events.
Oh, I so agree with you. Do you want me to show the chart so people
Sure.
can see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And let's talk about 23. So let's talk about Virgo. Virgo is the sign. I personally, I'm going to say this. You can quote me on this one, Liz. This is a Rachelism. I think Virgo is the most underestimated sign, and 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 I'll explain why. It's because Virgo just knows what needs to be done. They just know. They walk in and they're like, this is out of order, this is out of order, and I'm going to bring this into order. And it's really the sign that relates to ceremonial magic and and manifestation. It's the sign that relates to the working with magic, and it's the sign of bridging the physical and the material. And so you have things like alchemy. You have things like sacred texts, all falling under Virgo's purview. And so when we have eclipses in the sign of Virgo, we have a real clear sense of what we need to let go of and get rid of, and in our stuff, our physical stuff, but also in our mental chatter. And we have a real clear sense of what we want to dedicate ourselves to.
I agree with that. And that eclipse is happening within 1 degree of my moon.
I know. I actually thought about that for you. I was like, how are you experiencing that?
Well, I'm feeling it pretty strong, and it's in my 4th house. And the last time we had this eclipse was about the same day in 2006, and my marriage ended unexpectedly. It was a big surprise. So, I felt like the rug had gotten pulled out from under me. So it's like I'm kind of thinking, okay, what am I not seeing? But I agree with releasing things because I've been cleaning out where I live, closets, the garage, and then helping my parents sort through and start releasing some of their stuff in their houses because they both have quite a bit of things, and they're, getting older and they don't need all that stuff. So
Yeah, that I think that's a really good way to honor the eclipse and the energy of the eclipse. I love the Sabian symbol for 24 Virgo, which is Mary and her little lamb. And it's, that's a symbol that talks about, or that relates to simplicity, that relates to our innocence, and that reminds us that we're not alone, that we're connected to nature, we're connected to spirit, we're connected to one another. And
absolutely.
and so here you are living it, helping your parents clean out their home, and you are their little lamb in some ways.
Absolutely. And I take them to their doctor's appointments and those kind of things.
Oh.
So this chart is for Greenwich time, universal time. And Rachel mentioned the Sabian symbols, and those were channeled in 1925 by spiritualist medium Elsie Wheeler with assistance of Mark Edmund Jones. And then other people have used those symbols. And I talk about those on some of my other shows. And, they really give like some extra meaning to things, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I think it helps. Symbols and picture symbols help our brains to orient ourselves. They speak sometimes more than what words can say. Because it's one thing if I say, you're connected to nature. It's another thing when I say Mary and her little lamb. So yeah. So I like working with the Sabian symbols.
I do too, and I associate it too because being associated and connected to nature, I very much am, because the birds come around and it's like I feed them, so they're getting closer and closer to me. I mean, I don't touch them; they're wild, but they're getting that. I can get within about 8 feet of them because they're trusting me more and more all the time. So, and I have eagles here and hawks and peregrines and blue jays. I have a variety of birds here, so it's really fun.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for showing that again, because I wanted to point out a couple of things. First of all, if you look in the 12th house there on the eastern horizon, you'll see Saturn really close to the sun. And I think Saturn's influence is strong here. One, because the sun was just meeting up with Saturn yesterday. And Saturn is the planet that relates to the karmic stuff that we come here in this life to work through and to work out. And Saturn also represents what we're committing to, what we dedicate ourselves to. And so I look at Saturn's placement in this eclipse chart as being the hard the hard decisions, the fact that things can feel really urgent, like I have to change things now. And then you have that in an aspect with Uranus. And Uranus is the planet that spurs the change, that rouses the courage necessary to make a change. And so I think there's a lot of that kind of commitment to ending what needs to end, to reaching resolution for certain things, and to taking the stand that I'm hearing in so many of my client sessions, that I'm seeing in so many of my relationships. It's a time of taking a stand, saying I'm for this and I'm not for this.
That's great. So, what advice would you give our audience of how to work through this energy of this eclipse, this lunar eclipse?
Mm-hmm. This one, I think it really is make the hard choices. If you know you need to let something go and you haven't wanted to because it's comfortable, because you don't want to disappoint someone, or because you feel like you should do something, then now is the time to wrestle with why you are hanging on to something that isn't purposeful or meaningful. And then the other thing I think that is really helpful for this eclipse is, I think, having a vision of the future that you want to move into. And so it's not that you're manifesting something, because we don't manifest during eclipses, the energy is too intense, but it's having a vision that you're dedicated to can help you to live into something and make it easier to let go of anything you need to let go to prevent you from moving into that. And I'll give an example, because I think it can, when people say letting go, you got to let go, I think it can always be like vague. And so I'll give an example. So there's, I know that this is a silly example, Liz, that I'm gonna say, but yesterday I was working out, I was exercising, and I realized that my brother's getting married this summer, and my arms have to look good in a dress. I mean, I'm a Libra. This is very much of a Libra internal dialogue. And I have been a little lackadaisical about my exercising over the last couple of months because I've been too busy. And so I realized that if I want to feel proud and strong, if I want to be proud of my body and feel like I'm in my strength and I'm feeling my best for the wedding, then I'm going to need to choose to make time to work out my arms in the way that I know I need to work them out to look good in the dress and to feel strong. It's more about the strength. And so that's just a really silly example, but I think if you take that and you expand it to look at something that you like, writing a book or making a job change, or making the commitment to go online dating, whatever it is that you want, pursue the bigger idea, pursue the thing that scares you because it's a little exciting.
I like that. And I like make a commitment instead of a goal, because a commitment is kind of like a promise to yourself.
Yeah.
And so then you have to be accountable for yourself. And the example you used reminds me that the the nodes are in Virgo and Pisces, so there is somewhat of a health component to that. Do we need to make an improvement? And it doesn't mean that you make 25 improvements to your health, but one can kick it off and start. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And yeah, one commitment to exercising my arms 3 times a week and to eating, like simplifying my diet, it can make a big difference.
exactly. Okay, so we're going to move on to the solar eclipse that's in Aries, and it's a new moon at 9 degrees Aries. Do you want to talk first before we look at the chart?
Yeah. So I personally love this eclipse. I think it's a wild ride. We have a kite aspect pattern, and kites are a grand trine. Well, actually, I'm sorry. No, on mine we do because of the where I live. Let me look back at yours and make sure that we're looking at the same one. Yeah. Okay. So mine we do because of the midheaven. Uh, but I'm going to use this. I'm just going to use. I have my chart up for California, but I'm just going to use I'm going to use this metaphor anyway because I like it, and that is that this is a forward moving eclipse, and this because we have Mercury at that world point at 0 degrees Aries retrograde, because we have Neptune sliding over into Aries the next day. We've got the sun, the moon, Chiron, and Eris all in Aries. There's a lot of sudden initiation of action. And so things that have been building up for a while are going to shoot out like rockets. And I think this eclipse is going to involve a whole lot of activity, um, where projects that have been waiting in the wings now can take off, where you might have a sudden burst of energy for accomplishing something or doing something. And there's a lot of looking back with this one, with Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde, but there's so much energy pushing us forward that I think we could feel the frustration of not knowing if we need to act or if we shouldn't act. There's a stagnancy at the same time that there's a lot of momentum. And so what you could have is some impulsivity or people acting out in ways that feel like out of left field. What do you think, Elizabeth?
Well, I like that because it's like I can feel it building up to really the push forward. I can feel
Mhm.
that. And so with that Aries energy, it's almost like if you have 5 things, it's like just act on one because it's all going to work out and it'll get you going, it'll propel you forward. So I totally agree with moving us forward, and it almost feels like, well, maybe the year finally starts. um,
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and we still have Venus retrograde until the April 12th. We have Mercury retrograde until April 7th. But there's but this Mercury, this eclipse features Mercury at the 0 degree Aries point, which is a point of courage. And it's like you can be in your fiercest, wildest self, and so you can accomplish things that may otherwise be really challenging for you.
Oh, absolutely. And the sun, is ingressing into Aries about a week
Mhm.
before this. So it's like we have eclipses and then the spring equinox. I mean, so there's a lot going on. And so it's like that Pisces pileup is like gradually now becoming an Aries pileup.
Right. Yeah. And I like to say that, and I think this is especially true with Neptune, because Neptune's in the last degree of Pisces. And I think that Pisces to Aries axis line is or that Pisces Aries cusp is the needle that bursts the bubble. And because Pisces can be a dream world, it can be a place of idealism. And once things move into Aries, Aries is the sign of sharp objects. And so any bubbles of illusion that we have are getting popped, which doesn't always feel comfortable when you're in the bubble, but there's something relieving about knowing truth, about knowing, oh, okay, this is what the picture really looks like. It's not that bubble that I've been surrounding myself with.
Exactly. Now it's like come back to reality.
Yeah. And I love the Sabian symbol for this one too. And it's 9 Aries, and the symbol is a crystal gazer. The development of an inner realization of organic wholeness. And that's from Dane Rudhyar's The Astrological Mandala.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Mhm.
It's been out of print, but I think it's coming back into print. And you can also get all of those. There's a website where you can read them all. We have access to all of them, so that's really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So anything else that jumps out at you with this astrological chart for that solar eclipse?
Yes, I wanted to point out what Bernadette Brady writes about the Saros cycle, which is 9 New North. And this is from Predictive Astrology. I think it's her new one.
Yeah, and the old one is Eagle and the Lark. So
Yes, exactly. And she writes, this is a very physically expressive series. Accidents, great physical effort, violence, or any sudden physical events. These can be experienced positively, as, for example, the first time skiing, or it can be felt negatively in terms of accidents and so on. The approach to take when the series is affecting a chart is to not hide away, but to undertake some physical activity with an ever watchful eye to safety. So I think that's an important thing. With the North Node in Pisces, we're naturally dealing with looking at overall health and wellness and healthcare systems and the way that we treat health concerns. And so I think our physical health is especially important during this eclipse and for the 4 months after the eclipse as well. Usually, I'm sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth, go ahead.
I would agree. And I think it's important to do some physical exercise. Now, that doesn't mean go run 5 miles and you can barely walk a block. That means whatever is in your comfort zone, and then maybe push it a little, like 5% or 10% more. So if you can only walk a block now, maybe walk a block in 10 feet.
Yeah. I think that's going to be really important to let some of that energy out. And we also have Mars out of bounds too. And Mars is in a trine aspect with Saturn and the North Node and Venus. So any anger that builds up also needs a release.
I would agree with that. So yes, absolutely. And Dabney from Lawless Astrology says hello.
Hey, oh my gosh, Dabney, it's so good to see you. Aw.
Thanks for joining us, Dabney.
Yeah, definitely.
So is there anything else that you want to talk about in this chart, or just give
Yeah,
some key points on how to work with it?
I think so one other thing I wanted to mention, and that is our mutable signs. Actually, every sign is going to feel this. The mutable signs with the eclipse on the 14th, the cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, especially, you had those eclipses on your axis line last year. And so this is a repeat of a lot of that, and especially the April 8th eclipse. And so cardinal and mutable are especially compressed during this time. And if you have any planets or angles, especially personal planets or angles within 5 degrees of these points, then you can have the kind of experience that Elizabeth, that you talked about, which is like the suddenly your life is in a different chapter. And we don't want to judge any of that as horrible or wonderful. Anything that happens during that time is fated. It is meant to be. And so there's a silver lining over any cloud that hangs over us.
Absolutely. So how can people work through the solar eclipse?
Yeah, the solar eclipses tend to be more physical. Lunar eclipses tend to be more inner oriented, and solar eclipses, we need to, so what you were saying, exercise. I think that's such an important thing for this one. Take a calculated risk. Take a if you feel like something's coming to an end in your life, then help it along. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Don't be afraid of going into a new beginning. Also, I find that with this one, that that anything related to working with your hands is going to be good. Getting your hands in the dirt, planting some seeds. In many places in the northern hemisphere, it's getting warmer. Spring is coming. Plant some seeds. Work in your garden. I think anything you can do to ground yourself in nature is going to be helpful.
Well, thank you for that advice. And thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on and talking about the eclipses. Rachel will be back in a few months, and we'll talk about the eclipses that are happening later this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be on Talk Cosmos on March 30th, talking about the solar eclipse at 9 degrees Aries, and you can watch that live here at 1 p.m. or come back later and watch it. Other episodes with Astrology Star Sisters are Chinese astrology, decans using astrology and tarot, dwarf planets, fixed stars, planet stationing, Uranian astrology, and Venus star point. And Justin and I do the astrology forecast and the full moon forecast each month, and from time to time a Chiron asteroid series. And there's still a few episodes of the 2025 astrological highlights coming, and a new show is Magical Astrology, and another new one coming is Relationship Astrology, and Justin, Robert, and Simon will be joining me for that one. And then Rachel, I'll let you tell them what you're doing.
Yeah, so I have an online workshop Saturday, April 12th from 10 to 1 Pacific time. And it's astrology for business strategy. And so that one is available on my website. And then I'm also teaching for the Shift Network. And I have an exciting retreat coming up March 28th to April 1st with Maurice Fernandez and Merriman Casals. And we are doing all month long, we are doing webinars. I have mine on Saturday and talking about Neptune and Aries. So this is going to be such a powerful retreat. And then, of course, doing the OPA Astrology Biz, April 25th to 27th. And I'll be talking about social media. So.
Boy, you're a busy lady. That's great. I'm looking forward to those.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to them.
And I want to thank our audience for joining us today, and those that watch at a later date. We appreciate you. And to get a hold of Rachel, it's Rachel langastrologer.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And we're going to say goodbye for now, and we'll see you next time.
All right, Liz, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me.